Cooperative Learning in Reading and Writing by Amanda Patton, Bowling Green State University, fall of 2016. Hi, my name is Amanda Patton, and I am currently a fifth grade teacher at Eden Elementary School in Eden, Ohio. I teach language arts and science, both of which are passions of mine. I tend to lean more towards science because I'm more comfortable with teaching in that field, but reading and language arts is slowly becoming one of my more favorite subjects to teach. I became a teacher because I think it is so important for students to have a positive role model and someone who is there to care about them and not there for the money. Because let's be real, teaching and money don't really go hand in hand. I did not have all that positive of an educational experience while I was growing up, so that negative experience caused me to want to create a positive experience for students in the future. I am also a student at Bowling Green State University working on my master's program in reading development so that I am able to work more and gain more skills for students who are struggling readers or students who have surpassed their current grade level and need more instruction at a higher level. Today, during our presentation, participants will be able to learn and listen about various cooperative learning activities to be used in reading and writing, and they will be able to determine ways to use strategies in their own classroom environment. Our agenda for today looks a little bit like this. We'll be starting with our introductions and objectives, which we've already gone through. We will then discuss what is cooperative learning. I have a couple of questions for you. Then we'll jump right into various cooperative learning strategies that can be used in reading. Then we'll talk about some writing strategies. And then I have a wrap-up summary for you, and then I have some closing questions to kind of leave you thinking about our presentation from today. So, our main topic of discussion is what is cooperative learning and how can you use it in a reading and writing classroom? Cooperative learning is a successful teaching strategy in which small teams, each with students of different levels of ability, use a variety of learning activities to improve their understanding of a subject. So, students could be working in small groups, they could be working in pairs, they could start out working individually, then move into small groups, and of course there's a variety of ways that you are able to group your students and a variety of ways that they can demonstrate what they are learning or what they have gained from working in their groups. So once you've decided to use cooperative learning in your classroom, your next question to yourself is, how do I create my groups? This can be done by ability level. You could group together your high students, your medium students, and your low students, or you could have a group of high, medium, and low, or you could have pairs of a high student and a low student working together, any of those combinations. Another way that you could group students is through gender. Maybe you're going to have all the boys in the classroom working together and all the girls working together. Or maybe you want to pair up specifically a girl and a boy. Or maybe you want to do it completely random. One of my favorite ways to group students is to tell them to look at the color of their socks that they're wearing for the day and find a partner that has a similar sock color. Or you could group by interest level. So maybe have students decide or answer the question, what is your favorite kind of candy bar? And you've got 5 different options. Well, there you go and create your 5 different groups based on what their favorite candy bar is. Truly, the way that you can create groups or create pairs is very dependent on how creative you want to get with your grouping strategy. My first question for you today is, why is cooperative learning important? Please pause the video or take this short amount of time to think about your answer or maybe discuss if you are sitting with a partner. So you've taken some time to think about your answer to why is cooperative learning so important. Here is my viewpoint on that. Cooperative learning is more of a skill, a social skill based learning strategy, and students need to learn to be socially active for really any type of career field that they would choose to be in. So teaching them at a young age that they need to work together and bring their own knowledge to the table will be beneficial in their future endeavors. So I use cooperative learning in my classroom so that students are able to gain other viewpoints that maybe they hadn't thought of, to talk to students that they don't normally associate themselves with, and to really learn to articulate what they are thinking and why they are thinking so that other students are able to get an idea of where their viewpoint is coming
My
from.
second question for you is, how can reading and writing be done with cooperative learning strategies? Again, if you need to pause the video or use this time to think of an answer or possibly discuss your answer with your partner.
Again, you've taken some time to answer the question, how can reading and writing be done with cooperative learning strategies? This is kind of a tricky one because a lot of the time we think of reading and writing as an independent, sit alone at your desk work time. But reading and writing can be a group activity. For example, reading could be done individually, but then when it comes to discussing what they've read or answering a reading comprehension question, they could work together in a group. And maybe student A brings their own background knowledge to the table, while student B doesn't have that background knowledge, and now student B has a stronger understanding of how to answer that question. In regards to writing, again, another independent task traditionally, we could see students working together to brainstorm on a writing prompt. Or maybe students are pairing together or in small groups to do writing, where student A starts with her idea and then student B adds on to it. And then we see just a progression of ideas till we form a full consent story or answer to the prompt. Either way, writing and reading can be incorporated in cooperative learning activities, and if you stick out this presentation, you will gain some of those ideas or activities to use in your own toolbox and in
So
your own classroom.
let's roll into some reading strategies that are comparable with cooperative learning strategies. My first strategy for you is called Four Corners. This is not only a cooperative learning activity, but it also gets the students up and moving. There are two different ways that you could use this activity. Example one is to use this as a way to get your students into groups. So you could pose a silly question with four answers or four possible answer options. So you could say, out of these four colors, which is your favorite? And students would go to their specific corner that of their answer of their choice. Once the students are in that corner, have the students answer a reading question, maybe have some sort of group discussion that goes along with what you're reading in class or what the students are reading, so that there is a discussion going on with those group members that are there. The second way that you could use this in your classroom is by using it as a sort of review activity. So you could pose a multiple choice review question. Maybe you give two answers in that are really close to one another, but there is the obvious better answer. So then students could move to A, B, C, or D, depending on what they think is the correct answer. And once students are in that corner with the people that they're there, they could just discuss why they're correct, maybe come up with, through discussion, why they're incorrect, and then come back as a whole group discussion so that you're able to make sure that students do know when it is or what answer is the correct answer before moving on. So another cooperative learning technique is jigsaw. This could also be known as expert groups. First, you place students into groups just randomly. Then the student selects a topic that they want to become an expert in. So this can be used in a science classroom where you're studying the bones in the arm. So they're in groups of three,
and one student wants to become really well known about the radius. So they would go into the radius group. And there they're going to learn about maybe what the bone is composed of, how strong the bone is, things like that. So then they bring that knowledge back to the group and teach about the radius. While another student was in a group about the ulna, and they learned all about the ulna, and then they're going to come back and teach that. This is an activity where one student is responsible for learning specific material and coming back and teaching the other group members. Not only is this a social skill, but this is also an accountability skill as well as a responsibility skill. So the student is really responsible for the learning of the whole group based on what the reading material was in their expert area. My next cooperative learning activity that I have for you is called literature circles. In this specific activity, I would group students by ability level. So I would have a group of higher ability students, a group of medium on grade level students, and then a low level group. This is where students could read various novels together at their group's average reading level. And then students could work together to answer comprehension questions, or maybe they're sitting there and they're practicing their fluency, reading out loud to each other. So, in this sense, we would have a specific reader with active listening going on. But in this literature circle activity, students are able to find meaning through various perspectives because not all students in every group are going to have the same viewpoints or the same background knowledge to bring to the table. So students are able to listen to other ideas and help that or use that to help them to form their own. This could also be a book discussion kind of group or um, whatever you want to call it. The main focus of this is that this is student led. The teacher might sit in on a discussion, but he or she is not really putting in their 2 cents. They might just sit there to see what the students are really talking about, maybe give a push here or a push there, but students are owning their own learning and becoming true independent literature know-it-alls. Next, we have round robin reading. This is similar to literature circles, but you could have your students grouped however you wanted them. And all students are reading the same story. So maybe it's your weekly story that you're reading in class. During this activity, there are active readers and active listeners. One student is reading part of the passage while the other students in their group or the other student in their group is sitting there and listening. This could be used as a fluency checker depending on how you group. If you have a high student and a low student, maybe the low student does a lot of the reading and the higher student is aiding in the fluency that's going on. This could be a useful cooperative learning activity in the area of comprehension. So your pairs or small groups have just finished reading your weekly story, and then they work together on the reading comprehension questions. They're all taking turns sharing their ideas on each question. So maybe person A starts by adding in their 2 cents, then person B gives their 2 cents until everyone has a chance to have shared what they gained from the story. Not only could this be a reading comprehension ordeal, but this could also be discussion questions after a reading passage. This way, all students are able to share their knowledge, their ideas, and their voice, and able to come to one conclusion about an answer or a discussion of what's going on in the story. In our next activity, it is when students work individually and then go into a group. It is called Think, Pair, Share. So students start out working on a comprehension question on their own. So this is when they're getting their true thinking out, writing down what they know or what they think happened based on the story that you've all read. Then students get up and move to their partner. This could be done in a strategic way where you have a high and a low, or maybe high and high, or low and low working together, or it could be completely random. Once they're in this pair setting, they're going to talk and share their answers that they had just worked on individually. Through this discussion, students will gain insight from their partner and possibly see new viewpoints depending on if the partner shares a different viewpoint, or maybe they can come to a connective answer using both of their viewpoints, or maybe they can finalize what they think and say, oh, yeah, that's what I was trying to get at. Either way, they're discussing their answers with a partner and sharing their voice, even if they don't want to share it in front of the whole group.
Next, we'll move on to mind maps. Mind maps can work as a reading or a writing tool. In reading, you could have a group using a large sheet of paper and everyone has their own color marker, and they could be working together to answer a comprehension question. So you start with the question in the middle, everyone jots down their ideas on this page, and then they work together to create one answer. Or maybe you ask the students to create a mind map about the story. So one student is going to start with the beginning, and then they add on to the beginning, and then we move on to the middle and to the end. Or maybe you're going to use this as a character mapping activity where the students draw the main character, and then there's thought bubbles about who the character is, what the character's motives are, or things like that. All some sort of reading comprehension retelling of a story. In writing, you could use mind maps as a brainstorming activity, where again, students are working with a large sheet of paper, all with different markers or colors, and they're brainstorming ideas to answer the topic. Or maybe you could use this as a graphic organizer and use it as like a web with a central idea, and everyone has a different spoke coming out of that central idea, and maybe they have some of the same and maybe they're all completely different, but you're showing your students that being different is okay and everyone's allowed to have their own ideas, because the main concept of mind maps is that everyone is contributing, and you can visually see that everyone is contributing because everyone is using a different color. So you maybe see that student A, who was writing in red, had a lot going on because their color is all over the page. And maybe student B didn't have as much to say because they were writing in blue and they've only got a blurb or two. Then you could use this information for the next grouping activity and maybe join all of your shorter answered students together so that it really forces them to come out of their shell and write more to be able to fill up this page. Now that we've covered reading strategies to use with cooperative learning, let's move on to some writing strategies used with cooperative learning. Our first writing strategy is a gallery walk. This allows students to get up and moving, which is not something that is always associated with writing. As a teacher, you would post pictures around the room or maybe short blurbs of a prompt that could act as a writing prompt. Students will then walk around the room making observations over the pictures or reading each prompt, and then they will use those observations to form a story or form a cohesive answer to the prompt. After they've created a story from the picture or answered the prompt entirely, then the students can share their writings with a partner that used the same picture as the writing prompt. So this strategy allows for individual work time as well as sharing out their writing and making writing a group activity, learning from everyone around you. Our next activity is ping pong writing. In this activity, students are in pairs, and you would give the pairs of students, or maybe the whole class, the same prompt. And student A writes the first sentence to answer the prompt and then passes the paper to student B. Student B then gets a chance to read the sentence and adds on one sentence. This process repeats until a specific time is up. So the students aren't talking during this time, but they are still working together because they're taking turns writing back and forth. So they haven't been able to talk about what they want to get down on paper or anything like that. It's just happening organically on the page. So this could be a fun activity as a get to know you, or maybe once students are comfortable with one another, this could be a serious writing prompt.
Regardless, it gets the students writing and they are able to get automatic or very quick feedback from a peer. Similar to ping pong writing is an activity called snowball writing. This is for larger groups of students, about 4 students at max. You would give students a prompt, a writing prompt, and then students work together to build ideas off of each other, causing a snowball effect. So then, as an assessment tool, you have a completed story written by these 4 students in which they all build ideas off of one another. In these groups, you could even have students with specific tasks. So maybe one student is in charge of character development. Another student is in charge of time and setting and place that the story is taking place. And then maybe a third student is responsible for dialogue. Regardless, all of the students are building their ideas off of one another and getting a story rolling. My last writing cooperative learning activity for you is Write, Pair, Switch. Here, students start out by answering a writing prompt or maybe answering a comprehension question on their own. Then they are placed in a small group or in a pair setting and they share their answers. When the pair of students have both shared their responses, they would have to switch and then move to a new partner. In this new setting, they're not sharing their own ideas, they are sharing their previous partner's ideas. So not only is this a sharing of their own ideas, but this is also an active learning activity where they have to be able to restate what their partner said. So then all students' ideas are being shared more than once and it's going around the classroom. So it's not just one person sharing with another person. Instead, it's kind of a slow spread like wildfire. So, those are all of the cooperative learning strategies I have for you in regards to reading and writing. So, as a wrap up or a review, cooperative learning is a successful teaching strategy in which small teams, each with students of different levels of ability, use a variety of learning activities to improve their understanding of a subject. This cooperative learning idea can be used in both reading and writing. Not only is it working on academic skills, but students are also working on their social skills and how to work together in teams. And lastly, this is Common Core approved because we are getting our students ready for the different careers that they might have, in which they're going to have to work with other people and work to find solutions within a group setting.
So, now that we've discussed all of the strategies, I have a question for you. Which strategy would you use in your classroom and why? You can pause the video to think about this and talk to your partner that you're sitting with, or use the time allowed to discuss this question.
I hope that throughout this presentation you were able to jot down notes and come up with some of your own ideas of how you could use these strategies in your classroom. So you've taken some time already throughout the presentation and now a little bit more time to answer question 3, which is which strategies could you use and why? So my answer to this question is I could use any of these strategies. Because I'm a language arts teacher, that gives me some freedom when determining how I'm going to use these strategies or when I'm going to use these strategies and how often. One of my favorite writing activities to do is the ping pong writing because students can get out of control hilarious when they're writing. Because maybe student A is starting off a serious story, but student B wants nothing to do with that serious story. So their second line is going to be so funny and off the wall and then forces student A to come out of their shell and write in a funny way. I also really enjoy using round robin reading because students are not always so inclined to read in front of a whole class. And with my class periods being so short, I don't have the time to sit down with every student and listen to them reading fluently unless they're reading in front of the whole class. So when reading with a partner and taking turns going back and forth reading, they are able to practice fluency, and the other student could say, whoa, 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 you didn't pause at that period. Or, hey, I think that word is pronounced this way. Of course, you would have to have guidelines set in how students talk to one another and give positive feedback or negative feedback in a cohesive learning environment. But those are two of my favorite, and I hope that you're able to adapt them to use in your own classroom.
My last question for you today after our presentation is how could cooperative learning help your students in your classroom? Again, if you need to, pause the video and talk to your partner or use the time allowed to think of an answer.
So you've had a couple of seconds or some think time to answer question 4. How could cooperative learning help your students in your classroom? For me, this is an easy one. It's no brainer. It helps them to become more social and find that learning is a social activity. I use pre and post testing in my classroom. At the beginning of a unit, I give a pre-test, and I don't expect my students to be able to be perfect on it, so they typically bomb that test. But then I use cooperative learning strategies throughout my unit. I listen to different discussions that go on. I see the work that is submitted throughout the unit, and then I see how they do on the post test. And the post test is 9 times out of 10 so much better than the pre test. And I chalk that up to the cooperative learning and being able to bounce ideas off of each other and share personal experiences that make for a stronger background when reading and writing. So students are not only learning from me and my lessons, but they are also learning from each other. And that is such a rewarding thing to see go on in the classroom, because I think sometimes students are better teachers than I am, or students can explain something better than I can. And to see those mini teachers or those learning moments that go on in groups is truly a groundbreaking time.
Thank you so much for viewing my presentation on cooperative learning strategies in the reading and writing classroom. I hope that you were able to get some much needed ideas to bring back to your own classroom.